Yesterday, I just want to give a brief uh, summary of what we did yesterday evening. So we discussed the basic elements of communication, of speaking, listening, and of primary import, presence. And so we emphasize that it's essential to have presence in conversation in order for the message sent to be message be the same as message received. And and that if our awareness or our presence is not there, there is no communication. Then we talked about how to naturally connect to awareness through various things, nature, sound, smell, um, breathe, the breath, all these different ways that we can just easily connect to presence. And then there are other things that tend to disconnect us from presence, and it's being tired or being hurried and fearful, these kinds of things that will take us out. So it's good to kind of know what those are. And then lastly, we talked about leading with presence by beginning a conversation with awareness, and then as the conversation goes on, returning and trying to maintain that awareness, and with the willingness to be honest with oneself about what's actually happening, just as it is. And then we talked about ways to anchor our attention in sensations of the body. So that was through grounding, center line, breath, and then touch points, hands and feet. So now I'd like to talk a little bit more about maintaining awareness while we're in conversation, which leads us to a couple other tools that we can play with in a little bit. So the first one, I kind of briefly mentioned it yesterday, was a thing that Oren calls choice points. And it's basically in a conversation, particularly as we're developing mindfulness practice, we may realize over time that we don't actually have to speak all the time. Sometimes there are pauses in conversation, and sometimes people feel uncomfortable. We feel uncomfortable with that space. It may feel awkward, and so we feel compelled to fill it up by saying something, but it doesn't really, it's not really necessarily useful. It's just throwing something in there because you're uncomfortable. And not that there's anything wrong about that. It's just, you're not remaining in presence when you do that. You're just basing it on this internal pressure that you have, that you feel compelled to speak. So we do, in fact, have the choice whether to speak or listen. And so if we do it consciously, it can be a much more meaningful conversation. And it may prevent us from saying something and then feeling like we needed to retract it immediately. It's like, oh, wish that could come back. Or, sending an email, which I apologize for all the emails I sent last time trying to get the right thing out to you. But anyway, sending emails when you don't mean to, it's the same sort of thing. So at the same time, that doesn't mean don't speak or leave other people in the dark about what you're thinking. We don't want to do that either. So it's learning to be conscious about that decision about when to speak and when not to. So conversation, as we know, is a very dynamic interplay between people's choice to speak or listen. And when they're conscious and respectful, the conversations tend to be more productive and satisfying. When I was thinking about this and in writing this, I was thinking immediately about, it wasn't really a conversation, but it was a debate. And the first presidential debate was such a classic example of a disrespectful interplay. And some of it may have been conscious, but it was very unpleasant and not very productive and very stressful for if not the people themselves, but everybody listening. So again, why are we talking? So again, we do it if it's an uncomfortable pause or if we're feeling left out in a conversation. So this is called the choice point, that point in which there's either an uncomfortable pause or, we're feeling pressured, or, and so we just pay attention to those times in a conversation when start noticing when there is a choice, when you can make that choice and do it consciously. So the ability to maintain presence at the choice point is actually fairly, well, it requires a lot of practice, I think, to even pay attention to that it's there. Because sometimes we just rush through those points in just a moment. The time's gone, and so you've already made a decision before you know it, unconsciously. And so there's this impulse to speak that forces us to verbalize, just to release that internal pressure that we're carrying. So those of us who are quiet, it seems like we may feel like our opening to speak comes and goes before we got the opportunity to say anything. And so consequently, we may miss out on saying things because we didn't catch the actual point of choice. So this is where the mindfulness comes in. We talk about in meditation, we pay attention to sensation, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And if it's unpleasant, we pay attention to, say we're sitting and something starts to hurt, our knee starts to hurt. And so there's a way of paying attention to that and not going with the immediate impulse of, oh, this hurts, I got to change position, of just staying with that. And it's a training in how to kind of control our impulses just to move and so forth. Now, if, of course, if there's something that's a physiological issue, serious issue, and you have pain, I would never advocate that you stay with it, just because. But rather this, I'm talking about, things that probably are going to subside anyway. And if you practice enough, you know what those aches are, or those points of pain. So at any rate, in the conversation, it's a similar sort of thing. There's a point in which you have the impulse to speak, because you feel uncomfortable, you feel like you got to throw something in there. And so if you practice with noticing the impulse and then trying to gather yourself in the instant, so that you can actually make a conscious choice about whether you're going to say something at that point or not. Okay, so what we're talking about is this certain anxiety and that we feel in conversation. And usually it's rooted in deeper needs, needs to feel seen or heard, needs for safety, acceptance, belonging, etc. So I find this interesting. He says the less confident we feel in meeting our needs, of these needs I just spoke of, the more pressure there will be that we will experience to speak up, or conversely to remain silent. So we may feel if we don't say something now, we never will, or if we do say something, something disastrous is going to happen, like disconnection. I think disconnection will surely follow. So the more ways we find to meet those needs and handle them skillfully when they aren't met, the less pressure we feel to speak or remain silent. So it's how to get out of those habitual patterns. Then we can actually relax into the flow of conversation without feeling some danger or urgency to say it all at once. And this is something that it takes time to do this practice. So it's important we find the right time to say things and the way to say it. And again, that just takes practice. So in the meantime, since it does require so much practice to do some of this stuff, because it doesn't come naturally, that it's real important to be kind to ourselves when we're doing these kinds of practices and pay attention to the small successes. Because when we do that, we note the successes, that helps our nervous system to relax and reset. So that's a good thing in conversation. So then we create a new baseline, and it can stop all the alarm bells in your head and then for them going off, and then you're rushing or staying quiet, rushing in or staying quiet. So gradually you develop the ability to make these conscious choices. It's just practice. And you can discern what's going to be helpful in actually moving the conversation forward and how to balance all the needs at the table. So again, part of the investigation here is knowing our own patterns. I mean, do we speak more readily or freely, or do we find it more difficult to come forward? And circumstance and events tied to gender, race, class, and other aspects of social location mold how we show up relationally, right? Our challenge is to uncover those patterns and develop an authentic freedom of expression. So that's about all I need to say right now about those choice points. So I want to go on to the next one, is pausing in conversation. So this is one of the best tools for training in presence, is to pause. And mindfulness can help you pause between this impulse to speak and your reaction, so you can have more choice about what you do. So, and actually the pause is very ripe with possibility, right? In one breath, you can notice your thoughts, feelings, and impulses and choose which to follow, like some sort of mini meditation. And then with presence, it can help us stay clear and balanced. Again, I think it's practice. I don't think you learn this overnight, but at any rate, it's very useful to have the pause, and in that space, you can ground your attention in the body and relax inner tension. You can return to your specific intention, remember your intention, your original intention, and then handle the emotions that are coming up, so they won't spill out unsuccessfully. So and then lastly, you can gather your thoughts about how to proceed. So again, sounds easy, but it's a worthy thing to put some practice into. So the more I am aware of the body, or you are the way of the body, you're aware of the body, the more I notice, or we're going to notice agitation or nervousness in our nervous system, and our corresponding pace or volume. So if we're starting to get agitated, and everybody kind of has their own ways that they deal with that stuff, but usually you'll have a change in pace, so you'll speed up when you start getting excited, right? I do. Or your volume may increase if you get more agitated. And so you can decide, you can go, it's not about being flat, talking flat. You can have energy and excitement in conversation for sure. But you can also apply the brakes when that seems more suitable for the situation. So these, it's just what we're trying to do is develop the skill and the proficiency to speak in a wider range of circumstances. So these pauses can vary in length. They can be, just depends on the situation. So it can be a microsecond, and which is just enough to get you grounded again. or readjust your intention. Or it may be something that you might want to make a little longer. And so you can insert a pause actually into a conversation. It's difficult to do it so that it's socially acceptable, but it is possible. And Oren gives several ways to do that. One is by taking a deep audible breath, and it's totally acceptable. You know, it's like you just all of a sudden so that allows you a certain amount of space. Or if you do a verbal cue and just go, so then you've created some more space there. Or a visual cue would be like looking up and kind of furrowing your brow like you're thinking, which you probably are, thinking like mad. Or you can just say something like, I'm not sure, I'd like to think about that. Can we pause for a moment? I need to gather my thoughts. Or this sounds important. I need to give it some time. So those are really quick little things that you can insert, and it'll buy you a certain amount of time. Also, you can resort to distraction, and one is running to the going to the restroom. So you exit, and then you just gained about a couple of minutes. Or you drop your keys, or those kinds of things. So if it seems clear to you that the conditions are not right for a successful conversation, you may want to take a break for a week or a day or a week or longer, just depending on what it's about and how strong the emotions are. So in these cases, it's important how we pause. You can't just say, I can't talk about this right now. Well, you can, but the issue is that you'll leave your partner you'll leave them with the conversation, and there's a question there. What is the other person thinking? They're left to interpret our behavior on their own, and so a lot of times they're going to think the worst, right? They're not going to know what. They just didn't want to talk to me. But in actuality, you just don't want to do it right then. So you need to choose. You can share your reasons for choice. So examples. I'd really like to continue our conversation, and I'm not in the best frame of mind to do that right now. So can we take a break and come back to this tomorrow, or the next day, or whatever, on Saturday, whatever you want to choose. But in this situation, and the next one I'm going to give, you've said you still want to stay connected with the person. You're not cutting off. You're cutting off temporarily, but you explain why you take responsibility for how you're feeling. I'm not in the best frame of mind, so we'll get back to it. And so that's really useful, and you specify when, and so you kind of taken care of the other person in a way, and you've also been honest about where you are. Another way to deal with it is to say, I'd really like to hear what you have to say, and I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Just name it. Name your limitation. So I don't think I'll be able to listen well. So let's take a break for an hour, okay? And again, it's the same thing. You're telling you the intention to connect, which is going to preempt any tendency for them to interpret our break as a rejection or avoidance. And then you've also taken responsibility for your limitations or your own desires. And so we're clear, we're acting on our own need for space rather than blaming the other person. So are there any questions about that? Maybe you guys already know all this stuff. This is stuff that I never learned. Yeah, Kim. Anyway.
Well, this isn't exactly a question, but a comment that I'm just realizing as I woke up this morning that presence is not like an on or off thing, but a continuum. Like, and I did an artwork last night and another one this morning, kind of a different variation of it. And one was like barely present, and the other had a lot of intention to it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so I'm thinking when you walk into a room, you could just, well, you walk past the threshold, you're kind of there. Or are you really there? And how far could you really, how present could you really be? And that's just what I'm kind of thinking about.
Yeah, I think it's real interesting. You say it's not on or off, it's always there. I think it's like whether we're tuning in or not, right? I think
And
it's
how clear, how much, how far, how much are we tuning in? I mean, you could tune into the point of becoming the other person, or I don't know how to define it, but really being there.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's not on or off.
yeah. Thank you.
That's all.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay.
Uh, may I make a
Yes, you
comment?
may.
So,
Yes, love to hear.
I mean, I'm enjoying, this conversation and, the intention to connection with the others. I think that's one of the important points that you are making, and how to do it.
Mhm.
Details of, pause and take a break or whatever. But the intention and choice is to connect with the other person,
Mhm.
where you are and where the other person is. And here I like to, emphasize that is like a ongoing relational connection between the two. And
Mm.
if I am sensitive to the other person, and I can, get some of the, information on where she or he is, and that type of a connection we can, you know, verbally or non-verbally, we can communicate. And that's very important.
Absolutely.
That establishing that type of a conversation within the, social type of an environment. I
Mhm.
think I'm listening to Kim's artwork. I don't know whether it was not totally social. It was more perhaps some kind of a, his own way of enjoying maybe the nature, or not social. And I'm just like a question. I'm interested. But that type of issue that you have been focusing on is very important, to
Mhm.
be in tune with other people, because you
Absolutely.
want to you want to develop yourself. Maybe you want to develop other people into whatever your values are, which I'm getting it. And that's all I wanted to say. It's just sort of my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
2 cents.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to go into next tool we have for the process of communication. It's in the process, the things that you can do. So, and that is pace. So, noticing pace attunes us to the pace of a conversation. Noticing pauses attunes us to the pace of a conversation. And this is interesting too, I think, because speech is connected to breath. And because our breath is directly tied to our nervous system, the pace of our speaking is often a direct reflection of our internal state. Um, I guess that maybe that's obvious, but I hadn't seen it written out quite that way. Um, so if you're feeling agitated, chances are your pace is going to be increased. Whereas you're more relaxed, your pace is going to be slower, and there'll be individual variations on that. But yeah, but it's because it's going through our nervous system. So what we need to figure out individually is what is the pace that you feel more comfortable and confident and relaxed in. So is it slow and steady, or is it fast? How does your pace affect the tone of the conversation? And these are just things to kind of study. What is the effect on your state of mind and body, or on the quality of connection in the relationship? And you can kind of play with these, and we'll be doing that in a little bit. Play with these and just find out what the answer is. Usually slowing down even a little usually increases our ability to lead with presence. It's generally, that's true. Again, because of the nervous system aspect of it. You speed it up, and it kind of speeds up your whole nervous system. So this is especially true in times of conflict. So we start getting into a more heated conversation, perhaps. And so if we automatically or pay attention and dial back our pace in these situations, it can have more of a calming effect. And I would suggest not only a calming effect on yourself, but we have so much impact on others, more so than I think we realize, that will have an impact on the other person, most likely at some level. So there is no right pace. It's just the pace that supports presence and helps create connection. That's what we're talking about. So this will depend on the circumstance and also on culture, cultural norms on pace of conversation. So lastly, I want to talk a little bit about, and this is what you were talking about, Mehdi, I think, and is about mutuality of presence. So leading with presence can be a very rich experience, and it can mature over time, right? And as it develops, presence illuminates the existence of the other. The more I sense myself, or you sense yourself, the more you're going to be aware of the other person. So interesting. To be truly in dialogue then means that we see the other person as an autonomous individual with their own hopes and fears, dreams, desires, sorrows, joys. You are more able to see that. So we lose mutuality for many reasons. It happens when we're on automatic. And so, for example, if we're extremely impassioned, we kind of forget about that mutuality aspect. Or if we feel really scared or angry or upset. And this can occur with friends or family even, who we see every day. They become so familiar that we stop seeing them. This reminded me, this is kind of a silly example, but it reminded me of this song. Maybe I'm dating myself by mentioning it, but it was a song, I can't remember the name of it, of course, but it's something about pina coladas. I like to drink pina coladas on the beach or something. Do you guys remember that? Some people my age do, the others don't. Well, anyway, so, and basically what it's about is this, it's a silly song, but this guy is putting out, he's got a girlfriend, but he puts out a want ad, or not a want ad, it's what do you call them? Those ads in the connections section of the paper, saying he's looking for somebody who's interested in doing these different things, drinking pina coladas and being out in the rain and blah, blah, blah. And so he sends it out, and then he gets this response from this woman. This is pre-Zoom and actually pre-computer stuff. And this woman writes back. And so they make this date, and it turns out that it's his girlfriend that shows up, unbeknownst to, anyway, so it's a surprise to both of them. But the point is it's kind of an example how you can hang around somebody for a while, and then you, for various reasons, you lose the ability to see them or the connection. So, okay, enough of that. Okay, so when there is no mutuality, there is a fundamental disconnect, right? So you can reduce another person to an object in relation to me. You know, you are something to me. And so you become a mental representation from my past, a vehicle for what I want, or an obstacle in my way. I think this happens a lot in cars. There's no sense of mutuality. Anyway, when human beings become objects rather than a person, this is not a good thing. There's nothing we can't justify. So it can go to just slights of another person, all the way to the worst things imaginable, slavery, genocide, that kind of thing. And that's a really gross example, but that's what happens when you don't have mutuality. You don't see other people as human beings. So presence definitely opens the door to mutuality. And when we lead with presence, we enter a relationship in which both of us matter simply by virtue of our existence. So to be truly alive is to enter into this experience of mutuality, of sensing one another and the mystery of being there, just being there in presence with someone. Relational presence is a true encounter in which I see you for who you are, rather than what I need or want you to be. So this mutuality is the foundation of real dialogue. Just as internal presence has many benefits to us individually, bringing awareness to conversation offers a host of benefits on the relational level. So as one engages in the practices, either on your own or with a partner or just in daily conversations, you can see if you can begin to notice any of the 4 qualities of presence, which are, we've kind of mentioned those here and there. Honesty, being open or honest with what's going on right now. Mutuality, am I seeing this other person as a human being? Uncertainty, we're launching into a conversation and we really don't know where it's going to go. And vulnerability, it's when we're very vulnerable in that uncertainty. So I'm going to talk more tonight about relational awareness, but I'll mention it here as that relational awareness is the capacity to include both you and me in the conversation, the external and the internal. Last night we were working more with the internal, and now we're starting to move a little bit into the external as well. So, and we're balancing our attention in a dynamic way back and forth. And so we'll practice with this in a little bit. There are many ways to develop relational awareness, but right now we're going to practice with what we worked on with yesterday and the points that I just mentioned this morning. So let's see, what time is it? It's 10:07. Oh, good. Well, so what we're going to do is be anchoring our attention in the conversation with an internal reference point, meaning we're going to choose one of those internal reference points that we mentioned last night. That was gravity, center line, breath, and touch points. So we're going to choose one, just choose one that you're going to use and that works for you. And then we're going to be bringing presence to conversation by anchoring our attention in the process of dialogue, which means attending to the choice points, that is, speaking. Do I want to speak at this point, or listening? And then playing with pausing, and then also pace. So this exercise, I just want to give a warning. It may be a little bit awkward playing with the pause and stuff, but don't worry about it. It's just practice, and we're just becoming more aware to what is happening in conversation. And as you play with it and practice with it, then you start to notice it more in other places. So, and remember to celebrate the small successes. Okay, so I think you guys have a copy of this, of these instructions, and it might be good. We'll go over them really quick, and then You'll have them so you can look at them. So we're going to be in pairs again. How many are we? Oops, over 18. Well, that's nice. And so what we're going to do, there's going to be 3 rounds of speaking. So these instructions seem kind of complicated. They're long long instructions, but you'll get it. So each person is going to take a turn sharing for a few minutes. In the first round, it's going to be about something simple. And I'm going to tell you what that is. Then about something. And then the second one is going to be about something more significant. So the first speaker will speak 3 times, and then you'll trade roles, and you're going to repeat the instructions that are below this with the second person speaking 3 times. So what you'll want to do is decide who's going to listen first, who's going to speak first, and then the person who's speaking is going to talk about something simple, such as, what did you eat today? Well, hasn't been much time for that. Or what's a hobby that you enjoy? Real simple. And then I hope you all have watches, clocks, or something. You need to set a timer for a minute. And don't start yet. And then you let each person close their eyes, establish presence, center yourself. Then you open your eyes, and then can you maintain awareness? This is, and then you start the timer so that you've just gone into presence. And then you start the timer, and then the first person shares. And to support presence while speaking, try to keep a little bit of awareness in your body, feeling the weight of your body or a touch point. So, speaker, need to be present to yourself while you're doing this. No, it's the person, the listener is supporting presence while speaking. So they're maintaining presence on themselves, but they're also supporting the speaker by putting presence on them too. Okay, and then you take your time speaking and listening, and as you hold on a second, I have lost my place. Yeah, okay, skipped a page. So support presence while listening, try to keep a bit of awareness in your body, feeling the weight of your body, touch point. When the timer rings, stop, turn your attention inward and notice what's happening. How do you feel? Did you lose presence? Reset the timer for a minute and a half. Same people. Share about something from the week that has some significance, positive or negative. Example, had great news at work. This is the fires out west are troubling you. I don't know if they're still burning. I haven't heard about fires. Or a friend has COVID and you're concerned, but don't choose something really too challenging, because we're working on the practice of this. And so you don't want to be overly stimulated. So let's choose something relatively mild. Then you'll start the timer, and person A shares while person B listens for the last time. And then to support presence, the speaker, while speaking, he's going to practice pausing a few times during the flow of your you're going to practice pausing during your speaking. And this can be short, inconspicuous pauses or longer, more considered ones. So just experiment with the pauses. And then the listener is doing the same thing as above. You're balancing between being aware of yourself and being aware of the other person. Okay, then the timer rings. You turn your attention toward inward and take a longer pause. Notice what's happening, how you feel. Did you lose presence? And then lastly, you reset the timer and the person A, or the first person, will continue speaking about the same topic. So it's just continuing. And this time practice slowing the pace just slightly, taking your time with words. And does this help you to maintain presence? So this is again, experiential. Does this help or not? Changing your pace. And then when the timer rings, stop, turn your attention inward and notice what's happening. How do you feel? Do you lose presence? And then you swap. So it sounds very confusing, but once you get into it, you'll have the instructions. So you can do that. And then when it's all done, then you'll talk together. So is that as clear as mud? Okay. All righty then. So, oh, great. She's writing the instructions. That's wonderful. Thank you, Amanda.
Hey, Laurie, I have a quick question. You
Yes.
wanted to do round 2 as well? Read the instructions from start to finish before beginning. After you've each completed round, take about 5 to 10 minutes to discuss. We're going to do this part as well. Then move on to round 2 below once we trade.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's on the instructions. Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All righty.